The phallic superstition is founded essentially in the shit, hold on. In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization, and their ultimate weapon, a corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
The phallic superstition is founded essentially in the family idea. Captain Richard Burton recognized this truth when he asserted that amongst all barbarians whose primal want is progeny, we observe a greater or less development of the phallic worship. This view, however, is imperfect. There must have been something more than a mere desire for progeny to lead primitive man to view the generative process with peculiar feelings embodied in the superstition. We are, in fact, here taken to the root of all religious awe. That the mysterious and unknown, that which the uncultured mind could not understand, is viewed with dread or veneration. As it may be, the object presenting this mysterious phenomenon may itself be worshipped as a fetish, or the resident of a presiding spirit. But there is nothing more mysterious than phenomenon of generation, and nothing more important than the final result of the generative act. Reflection on this result would naturally cause that which led to it to be invested with a certain degree of superstitious significance. The feeling generated would have a double object, and it's as it's had its double origin, wonder at the phenomenon itself and the perception of the value of consequence. The former, which is the most simple, would lead to a veneration of the organs whose operation conducted to the phenomenon. Hence, the superstitious practices connected with the phallus on the yoni among primitive peoples. In this, moreover, we have an explanation of numerous curious facts observed among Eastern peoples, such as the respect shown by women for their generative organs of dervishes and fakirs. Such also the Semitic custom referred to in the Hebrew scriptures as the putting of the hand under the thigh. God, that's dirty. Which is explained by the Talmudist to be the touching of that part of the body which is sealed and made holy by circumcision. This is this is there's going to be a lot of boyish giggling in this episode. I'm afraid. This is from the introduction to the influence of the phallic idea in the Religions of Antiquity by C. Staniland Wake.
Take control of your destiny. Understand your past, put your present in context, and know your future with a twist. Check out the designs and watch the videos about Advertise Tarot Card Deck on Advertise.com. When you order a deck, get a free exclusive bonus tarot card. Also, sign into the mailing list to get a free ebook about the Advertise Tarot Card Deck and other bonus content. Visit the storefront on Advertise.com.
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
Oh, shit. No. Ah! I was daydreaming. All right. Okay, so this episode is called The Revelations of the Phallic Idea and Religions of Antiquity. It was originally $5 Patreon tier exclusive episode. That's what it is. I mean, that's what it is right now as well. Who knows when it might find its way onto the stream. So, with that being said, I would like to everyone that's listening to this right now, time is so weird. Rate and review on iTunes. Go to the website, stigmatastudios.com, abercast.com. Check out the mailing list. And check out Patreon. Okay, there. It's all said and done. It's over, bros. It's over. So we've started our series about sex magic. And instead of starting with Tantra or this Kundalini business, instead of starting with Kenneth Grant, especially the Magical Revival, I thought a cool place to start would be looking at the dominant religion we probably all at least have a grasp on, and look at the sex mysteries hidden, and it's right there in its symbology and all that stuff right there, especially here in the Old Testament where we've been spending so much time this last year. Some stuff that shows up in the Ages graphic novel, this book, the book we are talking about tonight, literally hits a bunch of stuff from my last graphic novel. As a matter of fact, like unexpectedly, like when I got done with this, I was like, what? Why are there so many dick symbologies all over my macho graphic novel that I wrote? Anyways, this evening we're talking about the influence of the phallic idea and the Religions of Antiquity by C. Staniland Wake, published in 1870. I just got done reading this whole book for the $3 tier, and I'm going to sort of distill it down for everyone here tonight. Speaking of distilling, now would be a great time to grab your gin jar, everybody. You know what to do at this point in time. You have to fill it with ice cubes of any sort of variety. Except that they're too small, they'll melt super fast, right? So you want to get heavy, like ball heavy. Ice cubes. And then they put 2 shots of your favorite, like, bottom shelf gin in there. I'm not talking about, like, Tanqueray or whatever. Like, you want to get, like, the Bankers Club, or what's another one? I can't even remember what the other one is. But if you poured it into a styrofoam glass, it would just eat through it, right? That's why you have to have the glass of a mason jar to do it, the lead-lined mason jar. Put a slice of lime in there, 2 shots of what this bullshit gin that I'm talking about, and then tonic water. I was checking out at the store today, and the lady was like, "Tonic water, what does that do for you? What does that do?" Like, like it's a medicine. And I'm like, what does it do for me? I don't know. It lets me be able to drink gin. Huh? Well, you take it and you put gin in there, and it makes a pretty cool drink. And then she was like, "Oh, okay." All right. So, yeah, grab your gin jar. Here we go. Mix it up. Right. You know the formula for the weapon of mass distraction. Do it up. So we're going to start this with just the tip, if you know what I'm saying. We're going to start this podcast, this episode out. Just the tip. Let me just put the tip in. Just the tip. We're going to be starting by talking about circumcision. That's right, bros. That's where we're going. There is one phallic rite. We're going right to the book. There is one phallic rite from which its nature and wide range is of a peculiar importance. I refer to circumcision. The origin of this custom has not yet, so far as I am aware, been satisfactorily explained. The idea that certain climatic conditions, circumcision is necessary for cleanliness and comfort does not appear to be well founded, as the customs is not universal, even within the tropics, nor is the reason given by Captain Richard Burton in his notes connected with Dohaman, for both circumcision and excision, perfectly satisfactory. The real origin of these customs have been forgotten by all peoples practicing them, and therefore they have ceased and have their primitive significance, and so has they have ceased. Therefore, they have ceased to have their primitive significance. The circumcision that at least had superstitious origins may be inferred from the traditional history of the Jews. The old Hebrew writers, persistent in the idea that they were a peculiar people chosen by God for a special purpose, asserted that this rite was instituted by Jehovah as a sign of the covenant between him and Abraham, although we cannot doubt that this rite was practiced by the Egyptians and Phoenicians long before the birth of Abraham. Yet 2 points connected with the Hebrew tradition are noticeable. These are the religious significance of the act of circumcision and the sign of the covenant between God and man. Its performance by the head of the family. So I just am going to take a break right here. And as I'm reading this is not in my prepared notes, but as I'm reading this, I'm like, he's talking about the climate, and he's talking about like the environment and stuff. And one time, a long, long time ago, I don't know how to delicately put this. I was in South Beach, Miami, and I hooked up with a stripper, and we did it on a beach right there in South Beach, Miami, and I had sand everywhere, and I can't, like, I am, hold on, full story. I'm like, I'm an open book right now. I'm circumcised, but I can't imagine getting sand stuck in there would be like the worst thing. With that being said, I also can't imagine me being, hey, I got sand stuck in my foreskin, so it was so bad, I want to cut it off. I want to cut part of my dick off. Also sounds really crazy. So I'm not sure where I fall on this fucking Venn diagram of circumcision. I mean, it was in my boots for days. So, I mean, without getting into there's certain operational security that I need to have in place, but I wasn't able to change my clothes for a while. So, or to shower. So it was in my boots, in my underpants, in parts of my body where I didn't understand that there were pockets for grains of sand. It was everywhere. Okay, but now we're going. There's a reason this is a Patreon episode, I suppose. Okay, so we're getting back to this thing with Abraham, and it's a covenant between God and humans, and he was forced. He was doing the performance because he was the head of the family. He takes on a priestly role for his household. We're going to get into that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead. I'm pretty talkative tonight. So we have talked about a few of these covenants on the podcast. Every few generations, God likes to reset the board game a bit and add or take away or alter some of the rules, and pray I don't alter them further. Adam and Eve had a set of rules. New rules were set with Noah after the flood, and here in Genesis 17, God and Abraham sit down, and God makes Abraham an offer he can't refuse. Here we go. This is Genesis. I said 17, but I'm starting at 15. Because I like to add context to everything. So Genesis 15. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarah. Her name will be Sarah. So God gets off on renaming stuff. He renames shit all the time. And you're like, why? Numerology, maybe, bros. Hold on. I will bless her, and she will surely give you a son by her, and I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her. And Abraham fell face down and laughed and said unto himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old, and will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. And God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for your descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you, and I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his number, but will be the father of the 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation, but my covenant will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. And he had finished speaking with Abraham. God went up from him. And on that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in his household or bought with his money, every male in his household, and circumcised them. He is cutting 500 dicks, dudes. And God told him, Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13. And Abraham and his son Ishmael were both circumcised on that very day, and every male in Abraham's household, including those born in his household or bought from a foreigner, were circumcised. That's a lot of foreskins, man. We see Abraham as the father and taking on the priestly role for his household. And again, here, I'm sure we will do an episode on this story as we go through this, but it's another instance of the younger son getting a better blessing than the older son. But is one sort of echoed through history still to this day. If you know what I'm saying. Anyhow, back to all these dicks. Circumcision in its inception is purely phallic rite, having for its aim the marking of that from which the association is viewed with a peculiar veneration. This guy loves the word peculiar, by the way. Reading this whole book in a few days, like, I'm fucking tired of trying to its connections to the two phases of the superstition, which have been at their object respectively the of generation and the agent. We are thus brought back to the consideration of the simplest form of phallic worship. Well, that which has referenced the generative organs viewed as the mysterious instruments with the realization of the keen desire of children, which are distinguished all primitive peoples. So we're moving into the next chapter. Serpent symbolism associated with phallic worship. The next chapter. Serpent symbolism associated with phallic worship. That we have in the Mosaic account of the fall. A phallic legend is evident from other considerations connected with the narrative. The most important relate to the introduction of the serpent on the scene and the position it takes as the inciting cause of the sinful act. Who tells us the serpent was a special symbol of the worship of Bacchus? We're actually back in the book now, if you can't. Now, this annual holds a very curious place in the religions of civilized people of antiquity, although the consequence of the influence of later thought, it came to be treated as the personification of evil. And as such appears in the Hebrew legend of the fall. Yet before this, the serpent was a symbol of wisdom and healing. We've seen this in a lot of our other episodes, especially dealing with the Gnosticism. In later capacity, it appears to have a connection with the Exodus of Egypt. And we're going to get into that in a minute. It is, however, in its character as a symbol of wisdom that is more especially claims our attention. Although these ideas are intimately connected, the power of healing being merely a phase of wisdom, the earliest times of which we have historical notice, the serpent has been connected to the gods of wisdom. This animal was especially the symbol of Thoth or Tawut, the primeval deity of Syrio-Egyptian mythology, and all of those gods such as Hermes and Seth who can be connected with him. The serpent was also the symbol of the Egyptian Kneph, who resembled the Sophia of the Gnostics, the divine wisdom. This animal, however, moreover, was I had problems with this before when I was reading it, was the agathodemon of the religions of antiquity, the giver of happiness and good fortune. It was the capacities rather than having a phallic significance, that the serpent was associated with the sun gods, the Chaldean Bel, the Grecian Apollo, and the Semitic Seth. There came to be not only good but also bad serpents, both of which are referred to in the narrative of the Hebrew Exodus. And you're like, what are you talking about? I don't understand serpents in Exodus. But still more clearly, the struggle between the good and the bad serpents of Persian mythology. This symbolized Ormuzd or Mithra, the evil spirit Ahriman. In Exodus 7, Moses and the Pharaoh have a dick. They literally have a dick measuring contest. Like, literally, if you were to do a realistic reading of this passage, you'd be like, oh, they were measuring dicks. And I think Moses probably had the big veiny cock. Exodus 7, the international version, or NIV, New International Version, NIV 7. The Lord said to Moses, I have to get my God voice. See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I lay my hand on Egypt, and with the mighty axe of judgment I will bring out my divisions. My people, the Israelites, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. I will stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it. So this is also interesting because it leads to I don't see this talked about in this book at all, which is weird, but the beginning of this, Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael went on to become like the progenitor of Egypt. And Isaac went on to become like the progenitor of the Jews, or the Israelites, or the Hebrews, as they're called after the Exodus. So this is crazy because you could see God is like, look, you're going to put on a compelling argument, and no matter what Pharaoh says, I'm going to harden his heart against you. He's forcing this. He's forcing the rebuffment of this. I think that's very fascinating, people. Listen to me. I think this is very fascinating. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. And we move into this part called Aaron's staff becomes a snake. And this is where the good serpents and bad serpents take place. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, I'm sorry, I did that in my God voice. Okay, so the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then you say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned his wizards and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same thing by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake, but Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord Jesus said. So let's just pick this apart for a second. Aaron threw his staff down and it became a snake. These Egyptian magicians threw their staffs down and they became a snake. And Aaron's snake ate the other snakes. And then Pharaoh's, quote, heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. So these Egyptian magicians had, in the Apocrypha and in the Kabbalistic traditions, they have names. They actually play a role in the Djinn Jihad books. This whole thing actually spirals out in the Djinn Jihad book and also in the Ages. Both two of the latest graphic novels talk about this story, and they talk about these snakes, and that's why. I mean, it's hilarious. Anyhow, it's really funny. Of course, you're listening to this and you're like, of course they're talking about dicks, bro. And I'm like, yeah. They're talking about other stuff too. Come on. All right, where was I? Oh, so far as I can discover, the serpent symbol. Oh, this is back to the book. So far as I can discover, the serpent symbol has not a direct phallic reference. What? Are you kidding me? It's like, I don't know. Nor, after all, is its attribute of wisdom is the most essential, the ideal, most. Before I get started on this, here, we're going to do this.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Advertise.com. Find more episodes on this topic. Sign up for the mailing list for bonus content. Get access to the show archive. And visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books. Learn more at Advertise.com.
Okay. No, what? So far as I can discover, the serpent symbol has not a direct phallic reference, nor, after all, it is the attribute of wisdom, the most essential. The idea most intimately associated with this animal was life. Not present, but future, and ultimately, no doubt, eternal. Thus, the snake Baya was figured as the guardian of the doorway whose chambers of Egyptian tombs, which represented the mansions of heaven. A sacred serpent appears to have been kept in the Egyptian temples, and we are told that many of the subjects of these tombs, the king of Thebes in particular, show the importance. It was through... Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm having problems. Thought to enjoy a future state. The use of crowns formed of the asp was sacred, or sacred theramutis, given to sovereigns and divinities, particularly to Isis, the goddess of life and healing, doubtless intended to symbolize eternal life. This is me now. This is the symbol of Ouroboros, the ancient symbol depicting the serpent or dragon eating its own tail. The notion quite consistent with the idea of entertained by the Phoenicians as the serpent, which they suppose to have the quality of putting off its old age and assuming a second youth. This is the thing. This is the idea of him, of the serpent shedding its skin and becoming new again. It's becoming new again. That's the important part. It's not the shedding. It's the becoming new again. It's a new level. It's a new level, everybody, of confidence and power. It's a new level of confidence and power. Do you know what that's from? Hit me up on social media if you can tag where that's from. It's a new level of confidence and power. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. Another feature of the Mosaic legend of the fall, which deserves consideration, is the reference of the tree of knowledge or wisdom. It is now generally supposed that the forbidden fruit was a kind of citrus. This is back in the 1800s. They fucking wrote this. But certain facts connected with the, arboriety seems to me to disprove this opinion. Among peoples, the most opposite religions, various species of the fig tree were held sacred. Thus it is throughout nearly the whole of Africa, and the banyan or the ficus indicus. Well, why do we care about this? The sacred tree of the Hindu Brahmins, even in several of the Polynesian islands, as of various parts of the Indian archipelago and the northern Australian, the fig tree is high. Why are we talking about this? How come I didn't edit all this out? What are we doing? The fig tree is highly venerated. The ancient Egypt and the banyan and the Ficus saccharimius or whatever, sycamorus, was always considered sacred. Also, it was the Greece and Italy. According to Plutarch, a basket of figs formed one of the chief objects carried in the procession of honor of Bacchus, and the sacred phallus itself appeared to have been made of wood of the fig tree, as was also the statue of the phallic god Priapus. Judging from these facts, considering these sycamore was sacred among the Hebrews themselves, its fruit having the significance of the virgin womb. Whoa, its fruit having the significance of the virgin womb. There can be a little difficulty in identifying the fig tree, whether the sycamore or the banyan, the tree of knowledge planted in the midst of the Garden of Eden. The sense intended to be conveyed by the expression would be evident, although without the introduction of the tree of life, that this intended to represent the male element is undoubted. The Chaldean god Heya, who was symbolized by the serpent, was also the god of life and knowledge. And it means really the older race that had a form of faith, which the serpent was always indirectly connected. The adoration of the male principle of generation. The primitive phase of which was probably ancestor worship, while the later race adored the female principle symbolized by the sacred tree. This Assyrian grove, the tree of life, however, was undoubtedly had reference to the male element, and was, we may well suppose, that originally the fruit alone was treated as symbolically of the opposite of the principle. Yeah, so what they're saying is that the apple on the tree that Adam and Eve ate was a pussy. And then the other tree in the garden, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, was the pussy bearing tree. And then the tree of life was the dick tree. I mean, it sounds rough to say it like that, especially in this climate, this political climate. I'm never going to be able to run for office. There is still an important point connected with the Hebrew legend, which requires consideration. The nature of the protecting cherub, they call it here, cherub. This was merely intended as a symbol of the deity himself. There was every reason to believe that this symbol was nothing more than the sacred bull of antiquity, is evident from the description of the cherub given by Ezekiel in chapters, 1 and X, 10, I and 10. There was a religious significance of the bull, an animal which would be easy to prove was venerated by nearly all of the peoples of antiquity. It is now well known that the bull symbolized the productive force in nature, and hence was associated with the sun gods. The symbolic figure carried in procession during the festivals of Osiris and Isis was representative probably of the phallus of this animal. This also reminds me of Spain. Formed. That's a story for another time. According to the cosmogony of Zend Avesta Orismond, after he had created the heavens and the earth, formed the first being called by Zoroaster the primeval bull. This bull was poisoned by Ahriman, but its seed was carried by a soul of the dying animal, represented as an Izid to the moon, where it continually purified and fecundated by the warmth of the light of the sun, and became a germ of all creatures. At the same time, the material prototypes of all living things, including man himself, included the body of the bull. This is but a developed form of ideas which anciently were almost universally associated with the animal among these people and were addicted to sun worship. There is no doubt, however, that the superstitious venerations of the bull existed, and it still exists, quite independently of the worship of the heavenly bodies. The bull, like the goat, must have been a sacrificial animal in Egypt before it was declared to be an embodiment of the sun god Osiris. In some sense, indeed, the bull and its serpent, although both of them became associated with the solar deities, were antagonistic. The serpent was symbolical of personal male element, or rather had a special reference to the life of man. And while the bull had relations to nature as a whole, the symbolic idea of fecundity, the antagonism was brought to an issue, the struggle between Osiris and Seth, which ended in the triumph of the god of nature, which was renewed even during Exodus, when the golden calf of Osiris or Horus. See, this all shows up in my book too, but I have a kind of different take to it. Was set up in the Hebrew camp. All right, we're going to talk about Herme, Terme, and the pillars and groves. One of the primeval gods of antiquity was Hermes, the Syro-Egyptian Thoth, and the Roman Mercury. Kitchener identifies him also with the god Terminus, This is doubtlessly true, as Hermes was a god of boundaries. Oh, this part is all fascinating, by the way. If you just tuned in to hear about dicks and stuff, but this is actually very fascinating. And it's not about dicks and stuff. It appears, as Dulaire has well shown, he presided over the national frontiers. The meaning of the word Thoth, erecting, associates it with this fact. The peculiar primitive form of Mercury or Hermes as a large stone, frequently square and without either hands or feet. Sometimes the triangular shape was preferred. Sometimes an upright pillar, with sometimes a heap of rude stones. The pillar were called out by Greek Herme, and the heaps were known as Hermean heaps. The later was being accumulated by the custom of each passenger throwing a stone to the daily increasing mass in honor of the god. Sometimes the pillar was represented with the attributes of Priapus. The identification of Hermes or Mercury with Priapus is confirmed by the office which the later deity fulfilled. One of the most important was that the protector of the gardens and orchards, and probably this original office performed by Hermes in his character of a god of the country. Figures set up as charms to protect or produce the grounds would, in course of time, be used not only for this purpose, but also to mark boundaries of the land protected. And these offices being divided, two deities would finally be formed out of one. The Greek Hermes was connected also with the Egyptian Chem, and no less, if we judge from the symbol used in his worship, with the Hebrew Eloah. This, in the history of Hebrew patriarchs, we're told, when Jacob entered into the covenant with his father-in-law Laban, a pillar was set up, and a heap of stones was made. And Laban said to Jacob, "Hold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. And heap to be witness, and this pillar to be witnessed, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over this heap and pillar unto me for harm. I have here the Herme and the Hermean heap, used by the Greeks as landmarks and placed by them unto public roads." I mean, think of scarecrows. Think of the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. Think of the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz. Some great religious movement ascribed to the tradition of Abraham did. We're going into a new portion called the Great Religious Movement of Archaic Time. That some great religious movement ascribed to the tradition of Abraham did take place among the Semites at an early date, undoubted. But the object of this movement it is difficult to decide. It should be remembered that the Chaldeans worshipped a plurality of gods, supposedly to have symbolized 7 planets among his deities. The sun god held a comparatively inferior position, the moon god coming before him in the second triad, or at Ur. Now, Ur was like the first city. Now I could say that, even though I actually have Enoch was the first city. Cain built the city Enoch. That was the first city. However, I guess also was also a first city in Samaria. This is where we get the word urban, is from the special seat of worship of the moon god that Abram is said to have lived before. Remember the Jewish calendar moves on a moon cycle. Worshipping the moon god that Abraham is said to have lived before he quit it in Haran, it is in fact considered the light of the tradition relating to the great patriarch, may perhaps justify us in inferring that the Reformation he endeavored to introduce the substitution of the simple worship. The planetary cult of the Chaldeans in which the worship of the moon must to him have appeared to occupy a prominent place. The new faith was indeed a return to the old phallic idea of God and personal generation, worship through the symbolic beatus, but associated with the adoration of the sun is especially representative of the deity. That Abram and the higher notions of the relations of man and the divine being of his forerunners is very probable, but his sojourn in Haran proves that there was nothing fundamentally different between his religious faith and the Syrian neighbors. I am inclined, indeed, to believe that the traditional Abraham must be ascribed to the establishment of sun worship through Phoenicia and Lower Egypt, in connection with the symbols of an earlier and more simple phallic deity. Dicks, dicks, dicks. All I want is another baby. All I want is another baby. The tradition, in fact, declares that he taught the Egyptians astronomy, and we shall see that the religion of the Phoenicians, as indeed the Hebrews themselves, was the worship of Saturn, the erect pillar god, who under different names appears to have been at the head of the pantheons of most of the people of antiquity. The reference in Hebrew history in the teraphim of Jacob's family recalls the fact the name assigned to Abraham's father was Terah, the maker of images, and teraphim were doubtless the same as the seraphim, which were certain serpent images and the household charms or idols of the Semitic worshippers of the sun god, whom the serpent was sacred. This has been the Abercast, and I've been John Towers.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books at Advertise.com.